Welcome to this explainer, designed specifically for us healthcare professionals. Today, we're taking some pretty dense longitudinal data on neurocognitive aging, and we're going to translate it into actual actionable insights you can use in your practice. As clinicians, we all know aging brains change. That's a given. But the variability in how our patients actually perform day to day, it's literally immense. So this explainer is going to break down a fascinating recent clinical review that mathematically maps the relationship between physical brain pathology and cognitive preservation. Let's get into it.
Okay, so here's our roadmap for today. We're going to start by defining brain maintenance, then look at the DELCODE cohort study, track some neurocognitive trajectories, unpack the independent drivers of decline, look at modifiable risks and personality, and wrap up with key clinical takeaways.
All right, Section 1, Defining Brain Maintenance. To make sure we're on the exact same page before diving into the data, let's pin this down clinically.
We really need to understand brain maintenance, not just as some abstract, feel-good concept, but as a highly quantifiable clinical metric. We're looking at how well a patient's cognition is preserved relative to their structural brain integrity. Simply put, it's the extent to which a patient's mind remains intact, precisely because the brain itself is actively resisting structural degradation over time. It's like the brain's internal scaffolding holding strong.
Moving to Section 2, the DELCODE cohort study. Now, before we start applying these findings to the actual patients sitting in our waiting rooms, we need to know exactly who yielded these insights.
So this data comes from the DELCODE study, which tracked over 500 older adults annually for 4 solid years. And the absolutely crucial detail here, their baseline status. Every single one of them was cognitively unimpaired at the start, performing completely normally on standardized tests. They averaged about 70 years of age. This gives us this pristine, longitudinal look at the very early preclinical structural changes that are happening way before overt cognitive impairment even becomes obvious.
Section 3, Tracking Neurocognitive Trajectories. So, what actually happens under the hood during those 4 years?
Well, a staggering 89.87% of these cognitively unimpaired individuals showed a progression in white matter hyperintensities, or WMH. And as we know, WMH represents cerebral vascular pathology, usually linked to small vessel disease. This near 90% progression really underscores the sheer universality of cerebral vascular changes in a population averaging just 70 years old. I mean, it's happening to almost everyone.
And similarly, 88.21% experienced a linear decline in their medial temporal lobe to ventricle ratio, or MTLV-ratio. Now, this metric is a highly sensitive marker for aging-related brain atrophy. It maps the physical shrinking of those critical memory structures relative to ventricular expansion. So, structurally speaking, yeah, almost every single patient is declining.
But here is where it gets absolutely fascinating. Despite the vast majority experiencing physical decline in both cerebrovascular health and temporal lobe volume, nearly 60% remained cognitively stable. Or, incredibly, they even showed positive cognitive changes over those 4 years on standard composite scoring. This highlights the incredible variability in outcomes, and it proves that structural decay absolutely does not immediately or uniformly equal cognitive failure.
Now, the mathematical modeling researchers used to map this whole phenomena is brilliant. The data reveals that these physical pathologies are actually structurally coupled. So, higher baseline white matter hyperintensities, that early cerebrovascular burden, actively drives a steeper decline in the medial temporal lobe over time. In short, vascular disease is accelerating neurodegeneration. It's a biological chain reaction.
Which brings us to Section 4, Independent Drivers of Decline. While they are anatomically coupled, we also really need to understand how these structural issues independently attack a patient's cognition.
The researchers explicitly tested for an interaction effect between these two pathologies on cognition. And guess what? They found none. Instead, the data definitively shows that WMH progression and MTLV-ratio decline have additive, not synergistic effects, meaning they each uniquely and independently chip away at a patient's cognitive reserve. So, cerebrovascular pathology compromises cognition not just by accelerating neurodegeneration, like we just saw, but also via entirely distinct, direct pathways.
All right, Section 5, Modifiable Risks and Personality. Because, let's be honest, if we can't change it, this is just an academic exercise, right? So what can we as clinicians actually target to slow this coupled decline?
It's fascinating to see exactly which factors move the needle here. Late-life depressive symptoms and high neuroticism act as massive compounding risk factors. These psychological traits literally directly drive steeper medial temporal lobe atrophy and poorer cognitive outcomes. But on the flip side, traits like openness and maintaining cognitively stimulating leisure activities throughout life correlate with highly favorable trajectories. Mental health resiliency is, quite literally, a pillar of structural brain maintenance.
Furthermore, the study biologically validated this concept using DNA methylation profiling. Patients with a lower Dunedin pace score, which indicates slower systemic molecular aging, also exhibited a much higher brain maintenance index. It's fantastic because it beautifully ties together total body biological health with the preservation of localized brain structure. The whole shebang is connected.
Section 6. Key clinical takeaways. Time to distill all this complex multi-domain modeling into the specific steps you can actually take in the clinic on Monday morning.
First up, your primary toolkit absolutely must focus on managing cerebrovascular health as early as possible. Why? Because baseline white matter changes accelerate temporal lobe atrophy. Catch it early. Second, screen aggressively for depression and high neuroticism. Now, we all know patient compliance can be notoriously difficult there, but we have to treat these not just as psychiatric conditions, but as direct physical threats to neurocognitive architecture. And finally, promote lifelong cognitive engagement to build up that patient reserve. Vascular and atrophic risks must both be independently managed.
So I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. Given that nearly 90% of our healthy, unimpaired patients are already experiencing structural brain decline right now, how do we shift our daily practice? How can we move from passively monitoring inevitable decline to proactively engineering brain maintenance in every single aging patient we see? Thanks for joining me for this explainer. Hopefully it brings a vital new perspective to your next patient consultation.